Hi guys, I'm here today with another project for the Pink Paislee design team, and today I'm going to be using this Together for Christmas project pad to create a few little MemoryDex cards. I've been itching to get my Christmas craft on, and I figured this was a good way to start the festive crafting. So the project pad's great, it's got basically everything you need. I'm just going through and I'm going to look for a couple of papers. I've got a couple of ideas for these cards in mind. I know I definitely need a green, and I decided to go for that white striped sort of paper for my second MemoryDex card. The first one here though, I am going to be making a little Christmas wreath. So the first thing I'm going to do is just trim down my paper so it's about 4.5 inches wide, and I just want to fold that in half so that I can die cut a circle. And you can see I'm just sitting the die so it's a little bit off the edge of the bottom, and that's because I want this circular piece to be folded in half. Now I'm going to die cut a smaller circle from the middle, so you get the sort of donut wreath sort of shape, and you can see there it folds in the middle. The reason I want it to fold and have a flat surface is so that I can use my MemoryDex punch to punch little holes for the feet at the bottom. Now the next thing I'm going to do to create my wreath here is I'm using a couple of different flower punches to create some little flower shapes just from that same pattern paper. It's got a sort of two-tone green pattern on it, and I'm also using this solid green that is in the back of the project pad. There's all sorts of coordinating solid colors in there, so I cut two different sizes from those two different papers. I don't know that I've got enough here. It's just I'm gonna wing it and see how I go. I can always punch more later if I need them. So in the end, I'm going to use liquid glue, I think, and I'm just using my fingers just to rough up the edges of these little flowers to make them more sort of dimensional, give it a bit more texture. And then I'm starting with the bigger flowers, and I'm going to glue these on all the way around the wreath, trying to avoid the little holes for the feet at the bottom. And then these smaller flowers, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm sort of folding them, scrunching them up with my fingers, and I'm going to fill in any little gaps that I missed with the bigger leaves. I'll call them leaves, they are flowers, but any sort of holes there, stick them onto the base, and also layer them onto some of those larger shapes as well. Alternating the colors, it just gives it a little bit more variation, makes it look a little bit more like a leafy wreath. Once I've filled in all of the gaps and added all my little flowers, I am going to wait for the glue to dry. That's the one downside with using a liquid glue, but I'm not using a lot and it won't take too long to dry. And then I can get on with the fun part of embellishing this little wreath. So I'm going to use this gingerbread man puffy sticker, and what I want to do is trap a piece of thread between the puffy sticker and some pattern paper. So it's a little bit sticky. I'm adding the thread onto the back of the sticker and just sort of pushing it down. I'm actually going to end up using 2 strands of thread just to make sure it's a little bit stronger. This is some vintage gold thread and I'm just not sure how strong it is. So I'm pulling that across the top of the gingerbread man, trying to keep it as centered as possible. And then I'm going to stick down a piece of pattern paper onto the back of it. This is just to literally trap that thread in there and remove the stickiness of the back of the sticker. What I want is to create a spinning embellishment rather than a sticker. So I'm just carefully trimming around the outside of the puffy sticker, removing any of that excess pattern paper, being extraordinarily careful not to trim off those threads. So once I've got that all trimmed down, and these very small scissors are helpful indeed, you can see I have my little spinning gingerbread man strung on a string. And this is the reason why I folded the paper in the first place to create my wreath shape, as I am going to trap these strings, the end of the strings, inside the wreath. I'm using some really strong double-sided adhesive to make sure that thread does not go anywhere. Just adding a little piece top and bottom, and I've probably added way more than you need, but what I want to do is center the gingerbread man in the middle of the hole and attach the string at the top, and then I'm going to pull it tight, not totally tight, but just so it's nice and taut, and then stick the bottom thread onto the bottom piece of double-sided tape. Now, just to make sure that this thread isn't going anywhere at all, I'm going to actually double up on the double-sided tape. So I'm going to add another small piece top and bottom on top of the thread that I've already stuck down, peel the backing off, and then pull it down over the top of the second piece of tape and trim that off. That should make sure that it doesn't matter how you pull on these strings, they are definitely not going to go anywhere. You won't end up with a deconstructed MemoryDex card in the end. Now once that's all strung up, all I need to do is add some adhesive and I can stick both sides of this wreath together. I'm just using some tape runner. You could use liquid glue if you wanted to. The great thing about having the double-sided paper is it does add a little bit more sort of heft to this card too, so it makes sure that it's not going to warp because it does have that hole in the middle. And there's your little spinning gingerbread man wreath. Now, of course, it wouldn't be a wreath or it wouldn't be a project for me if I didn't add at least just a few sequins to this. So I am going to use the sequins from the same collection, and I'm going to pick out the little gold ones in here. They're really pretty gold. They're kind of like a tarnished gold, so it's a little bit more gingerbread man colored, which I really liked. It goes nicely with the sticker there. I'm going to use a little bit, again, some liquid adhesive, but I'm going to use some multi-matte medium so that when any little bits of glue sort of squeeze out, they're not going to be visible. It dries matte and you won't see any of it. That's my little sequin wreath there, last couple of sequins. I am just tucking them in and around the leaves. And I love how this little card turned out. Spinny, glittery, Christmassy, perfect. So this second card is even easier. I am starting with my pattern paper and I have trimmed that down to 11 inches by 5 inches. And I'm using my scoreboard to score from one end 1/2 inch and 4 inches. And then I'm flipping that round and scoring it at 3.5. And then just on the first 3.5 inch panel, I'm scoring in 1/2 inch from each side, and then using those guidelines to just trim off the corners and trim a cut line in from the fold. You'll see what I mean when I fold this up here. So what I'm going to do is create a little folding present card that opens. So I just am folding those 3 flaps that we've created in, and then I'm going to use my trimmer to trim off the other 1/2 inch from the other 2 panels. You could always rule a line and use scissors if you're not confident using your paper trimmer to do it, but it was pretty easy to get the paper trimmer to trim that all nicely off. So this is going to be my card, but what I need to do is punch the little feet at the bottom. So I'm going to slip this into my MemoryDex punch. This is on the folded edge at the bottom. It's going through a few layers of paper, so it did take a little bit of pressure, but it did go through them. And then I can go ahead and make the rest of my present. I want to give this present looking card a little bit of bulk, so I'm going to put a piece of craft foam into the middle here, just slipping it in. I'm just cutting it roughly. What I want to make sure it doesn't do is cover up those punched pieces for the feet. I'm just setting it down a little bit from the fold and a little bit up from the bottom just to make sure it's just in the middle and so that the card still folds easily enough around it. Added some adhesive and I've glued that down, and that's going to be the front of our MemoryDex card, and you can see it just opens like in a little V shape. That's why we needed the 3 folds, was just to cover the foam in the middle. Now to close up this folding card, I am going to use some ribbon from my stash with this beautiful red satin ribbon that I bought for some of my Christmas projects. And I'm going to line that up along the middle of the card, add some just rolling adhesive, and glue that in a straight line to the top of the card. And then flip it over and glue it onto the back as well. And then when I want to close the card, I'll be able to tie it up. But what I want to do is pop something into the center of the card. And I really loved this sentiment from the die cut pack, believe in the magic of Christmas, which I 100% do. But I want to add a little bit of something magic to this card. So I'm going to go back to my project pad and grab out this white glitter paper, which of course on camera here just looks like white paper. But I'm trimmed it down so it fits onto my MemoryDex. I'm adding a tiny little piece of adhesive so that I can grab a pencil and trace through the MemoryDex punch holes on the back onto the back of this glitter paper, so that I can then pop that into my MemoryDex punch. I'm just pulling the little flap out so I can see where it's going. I'm going to line up the holes and just punch those so that when I glue this onto the back of my MemoryDex card, the little feet will still work. I'm going to add my adhesive and stick that onto the inside of the card, and then I can add my little sentiment on top. I wanted to maybe just punch it up a little bit, so I'm going to add some craft foam onto the back of here as well. And then I was worried about the tape runner maybe not sticking to the glitter paper very well, so I'm just going to add some red line tape to the back of the craft foam just to make sure that this piece stays nice and stuck onto that glitter paper. Probably going a little bit overboard with the adhesive, but I would rather do that than have the sentiment fall off in the middle of Christmas. I do struggle a little bit getting the backing off when I use the red line tape on the craft foam, because it doesn't quite stick onto the craft foam until you press it down. So once I get that all off, I can stick that onto the back of my MemoryDex card and then close the whole thing up by tying a nice big bow with my red ribbon. Now that I've got the bow tied, I'm just going to trim off those ends and tidy them up a little bit. And that's my second little MemoryDex card all done. This was such a fun project, and I can't wait to make a few more little holiday themed cards to go in my MemoryDex box. In fact, if you head over to the Pink Paislee blog today, I've got a couple more examples there for you as well. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. If you want to keep watching, there's a couple more videos on screen, or why not check out my Patreon page? There are even more videos over there. Otherwise, I'll see you next time. Bye!